Episode 49, Winded City Countdown. Ben Russo, Matt Urich joining me, Scott Sternal. And we've got unfortunate things to talk about because I believe everything that could go wrong went wrong, and we are now exactly where we thought the Bears could be, but didn't want them to be. And so here we are. So let's start out, though. A week ago, we were on this podcast, and we were hoping for a Cubs victory so that they could win the division in St. Louis. That obviously did not happen. And then they won the division crown a couple nights later when St. Louis lost to San Francisco. So that was fun. Ben, how are you? Where's your Cubby fever right now?
I mean, obviously we're at the point where it's strictly playoffs. So watching these games, tune in, but it's not like, I'm going to be checking them with regularity. I mean, a win is a win, a loss is a loss at this point. I mean, I think their magic number was 3.
Yeah, it's it is down to 3 to Washington.
So it is what it is. I think the interesting thing here is, we talked what team we don't want to play, and it kind of seemed like the Giants were the team they were talking about. Well, suddenly the Giants are no sure thing of getting in as a wild card even at this point. It's a 3-way tie.
It wasn't until this afternoon when the Cardinals lost.
Yeah, so the Cardinals are, as of right now, are a half game back. So, I mean, legitimate chance it could be Mets-Cardinals in that wild card. And I'll take my chances any day of the week versus either of those teams.
The Mets aren't the same as last year. They have a lot of.
Syndergaard is going to be game. See him until game 3, probably something like that.
2, it'd be maybe 2 because that's when we saw Arrieta in game 2 last year, didn't we? Or no, we didn't. You're right, we didn't see him till game 3 because Hendricks pitched to game 2. So, we haven't heard from Matt. Jump in here. Where are you at with this wild card race, with this Cubs team, everything? Jump in real quick.
First of all, did you guys see the scenarios of what could happen if there's a 3-way tie? For the wild card.
Insane.
Yeah, it is so crazy. I gotta try and look it up. That was poor timing.
Is it really that insane? Isn't it just as simple as like?
No, it's not as simple as you think. Let me see if I can find it, and I'll.
They must have changed it because it used to be like a 3-way tie would be 2 teams would play, and then the winner of that game would host the team that didn't play for a chance to go. Is normally what it is. It's not like they do like a round robin or anything.
No way that like a team in one game. Could it? Yeah. Is it?
Yeah. Matt, do you have it handy or no?
Okay. So here. Okay. So it's this is how does the league designate the 3 team? Okay. Sorry. I'm reading this from the Mercury News. There's a very complicated set of tiebreakers to determine seeding designation, but they do not determine the actual wildcard teams. Those ties would get broken on the field with 2 additional games. Here's how it would happen. Team A would host the first game against Team B, with the winner advancing to the wildcard game. The loser of that first tiebreaker game would not be eliminated. Rather, the loser would go on the road to play at Team C in a second tiebreaker game. The winner of that second tiebreaker game would then advance to the wildcard game. So how does the league designate the 3 teams as A, B, and C? The first criteria is combined head-to-head order. So in here it says the Mets and Cardinals went 3-3 against each other, and both went 4-3 against the Giants. The combined head-to-head records then: Mets 7-6, Cardinals 7-6, Giants 6-8. You might have noticed that the Mets and Cardinals would still be tied. How would the league break that tie? The next criteria is intra-division record. In other words, the Mets record against the NL East versus the Cardinals record against the NL Central. And then it has in parentheses, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me either, since you're comparing 2 very different schedules, but whatever. The Cardinals hold a 2.5 game edge at the moment. So this was as of yesterday. So since they are 36-30 against the NL Central, and the Mets are 33-32 against the NL East. But the Cardinals have 10 games to play within their division, while the Mets have 11. So it'll be a while before we get some clarity. It could change. I mean, so it says here's the thing: teams aren't automatically designated A, B, and C based on this set of tiebreaker criteria. The criteria only determines the order in which the teams get to select their designation. So essentially, you get to choose. You could either play a game on the road, and if you lose that game, you still play. You'll play another game, or you choose to play one game at home. But if you lose that game, you're done. So I mean, you'd be stupid not to play at least the game on the road, right? I mean, why would you not? It gives you two chances to.
Yes. Here's the only thing I would say is a team like a team like the Mets only have one frontline starter. Would you rather take your chances in that one game?
Yeah, I know it's tough because it's
you take
my
the game on the process. The math says you have to take the game on the road. You have to take the game on the road because you have to give yourself that safety net that you're going to play. You're going to send your frontline starter out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree that way, but I guess that's my thought process. My only thought process would be like a team like the Mets. I mean, because the Cardinals, for the most part, don't have any really, I think, scares me. But you look at like the Mets where it's like if they throw Syndergaard out there for that game, they lose. Yes, they get another chance, so that's the benefit of it. But, I mean, are you throwing Bartolo or like I don't really know who you're throwing out there.
Yeah, and so I'm guessing those games would be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Because then they have to play the wild card game still.
Right. So, yeah, so the way I see it, like, so if the Mets are Team A, they would go on the road and play the Giants. And then the Cardinals would get the loser of that game, and then the winner of that game would get the winner of the first game. I mean, that if you're a Cubs fan, that's what you're rooting for, right? I mean, you want
because you're going to get their third and fourth starter in your first
games 1 and 2, and you're going to get them at home at Wrigley, and that's where you want to be, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that is absolutely what we're rooting for. Which right now the Mets are winning and the Giants play later. So,
I mean, I think the only thing that's really scaring me at this point is the pitching. I mean, I think Lester, I'm confident in that. We've kind of been saying, at least I have all season, is when is Hendricks going to fall back? He hasn't to this point, but, that's still in the back of my mind. And then Arrieta, man, I don't know what to make of that.
You know what, though? But here's
here's
the way I look at Arrieta. If they're going in thinking Arrieta is the number 3, like Arrieta is.
But don't look at it as that, because if he's going to be the third game starter, he's going to be going up against the other team's ace.
In that scenario, though, right?
Well, in any scenario, because even if.
Oh yeah, I guess you're right.
Like let's say if Syndergaard, unless they push Syndergaard back for game 2 instead, or Bumgarner or whoever to game 2. I mean, Arrieta would be matching up more than likely against that team's ace if Arrieta is your number 3 starter.
Yeah, true. Makes sense.
Right, but here's the thing: like, if Arrieta is my number 3 starter and he has to go against the ace, I feel better about Arrieta than a lot of teams would feel about their number 3 going against Bad Bum or whoever it ends up being.
It's just the point of this is a guy that you're on to give you innings and pitch great, and honest, he hasn't been. I mean, he's had a couple of good starts, in the second half, but that control is just I don't understand. They've been saying for 2.5 months that we know what it is, we're going to fix it, and he still just can't seem to throw strikes.
He just seems to have like that one inning every game where he walks like 2 batters and then there's a hit and then there's another walk and you're like, okay. And then the bleeding has stopped sometimes. Sometimes it gets excessive. But, I mean, here's the thing. The Cubs still have more than most. And even if...
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt they're the best team. It's still just a matter of... And it honestly doesn't matter. It's going to be whoever the hottest team is. I mean, this is how the playoffs always are. Is how often does the best regular season team win the World Series? It's not often. I think, if I'm not mistaken, ESPN or somebody ran an article. It was like 3 times in the last 25 years or something like that. That like the best regular season team won the World Series.
Yeah, I think the difference and why I don't like those articles necessarily is number one, like this is just what baseball is, right?
Right.
So like, it's not like, well, some people try to interpret that as like, oh, well, the Cubs, because they have the best record or because these teams had the best record, that's why they don't win. And that's not what it is at all. It's literally just that's just what baseball is. When you take a 162 game season and you take it from a marathon to a sprint, that's not.
It can be explained as best as this. Philip Humber threw a perfect game.
Right.
Sometimes that just happens, and unfortunately, in the playoffs and eliminate, the best team. The Chicago could potentially eliminate the best team in baseball because a pitcher or two got hot at the right time. That's what it comes down to.
Look what happened last year with the Mets. I didn't necessarily think the Mets were a better team than the Cubs at that point in the season, but Daniel Murphy hit everything in sight, and everybody was getting on in front of him, and all of a sudden,
and nobody could hit the ball for the Cubs. Nobody could get on base
right. All of a sudden, the Cubs' bats are cold, and Daniel Murphy is hitting 9 postseason home runs, and you're like, well, at some point, you just throw your hands up. You go, well, what are you going to do? Daniel Murphy decides to hit home runs when he's not a home run hitter. It is what it is. At this point, it just comes down to staying healthy and not.
Yep. I do think it's going to be interesting to see
and setting up the rotation.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be interesting to see how the playoff roster shapes up.
Yeah, Matt, do you have any? You and I were talking about that the other day. What do you think about the playoff roster, Matt? Where do you think it is?
The thing that I find funny is how many people last Friday when Miguel Montero hits that walk-off to win the game, team celebrates and stuff, and then David Kaplan on the post-game show says, well, I think here Miguel Montero has cemented his spot on this roster. I think he was going to, no matter what, and he's been playing a lot better, but I think no matter what, he was going to be on this roster because I looked at his numbers now. So his split for September, October, which obviously it's not October yet, but for September, he's batting .296 with a 367 on base, and he's slugging .630. So his OPS is .996. For a guy who's been real, I mean, he batted .233 in August, 200 in July, a .154 in June. I mean, the fact that you get a reliable catcher. Miggy's not the best at throwing guys out. We've seen that in the past. He doesn't have the best arm, but he's serviceable. He sets up well as a catcher. We all know how he is in framing pitches and stuff like that. But the fact that you have a left-handed bat who's been hot as of late, I think that's a huge plus for this team. And obviously they have Wilson Contreras, and Contreras can catch, and the fact that he can go and play left field too is a nice thing because in all honesty, I would rather have a guy like Miguel Montero or David Ross catching in the later stages of a game than Contreras at this point. And that's not really to knock Contreras because he does have a fantastic arm, has been great at throwing guys out, but I would rather trust guys who have, because Montero's got playoff experience, correct? He was on that Diamondbacks team that beat the Cubs, I believe.
And he was also played last.
He was
year.
also on.
Well, yeah, that too.
Well, and to add to that, what's really nice with Montero is, yes, you're now carrying 3 catchers. You can now use, you have 3 catchers. You have some versatility with pinch hitters. You don't, if you carry 2, you really have to be pushed to bring in a catcher as a pinch hitter. Now it's like, well, we have some versatility here. We can bring in Montero to pinch hit here, and then we could go to Contreras, or we could go to David Ross if we want to keep the defensive aspect.
Or imagine if you go to extra innings and you already use a catcher as a pinch hitter, and then you've got a guy catching 16 innings or something.
Right, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. But to me, I think the big thing, Pedro Strope's going to be activated for Friday, correct? Is that what you said, Scott?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the thing, because I think position player wise, there should not be anybody that's going to be a surprise on the roster. I wouldn't think so. I think you're going to carry. I mean, I don't know. Do you carry? Because what? How many pitchers are you carrying in this situation? Because you're going to have 4 starters.
11.
So you're going to.
7 is your mark.
Okay, so I mean, like you got Givens, Trevor Cahill, Chapman, Carl Edwards Jr., Justin Grimm. I would assume Mike Montgomery, Rondon, Travis Wood. The thing is, if you can't get something out of Pedro Strop, who's taking that spot? I don't believe in Joe Smith. Scott, I know you don't care for him at all.
I think he's garbage.
Yeah,
I think you can make a case that they'd keep Joe Smith.
Just because of
Jason, not bring Jason Hamill in.
Yeah. So, like, for me, what? Because I mean, Joe Smith is essentially like the equivalent of a loogie, but a right-handed version, essentially.
Yeah, and he just has. I mean,
I get,
Hamill just hasn't been good.
Yeah,
so.
Hamill. He's not gonna make the playoff roster. I mean, I don't know why he would. You're not gonna use him. He's not gonna start, and you're not gonna use him out of the bullpen. So, it's just that's my fear is that Strop either gets hurt again or is just plain awful. And what do you do with that extra spot?
The thing is, though, in the playoffs, as we saw, I'm pretty sure if a guy gets injured, you can remove him from the playoff roster and bring somebody else on, but that player is then done for the series. So, like, if Strop goes down, they could bring Hamill on and be like, well, Hamill's the replacement, and then Strop just can't come back. So there's not a ton of risk in carrying a guy.
Well, I more so mean like beforehand, like before the end of the year. If he's just
well, I mean, at this point, what is Strop anyway? Strop is your 4th guy in the pen.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going Edwards, Rondon, and Chapman before him anyway.
I agree. Because I think Edwards has earned the right to be that 7th inning guy, without a doubt. He's been.
Can the Cubs just play Can the Cubs just play the Reds for all 3 rounds of the postseason?
Sure.
That would really make this whole. It would really just make this whole thing a whole lot easier, to be honest with you. All right. Well, that's enough with the Cubs. The Cubs, as I wrote for the show description this week, they are the distraction. Because the Bears are. I don't know who's a bigger dumpster fire right now, the Bears or the Bulls. I'm going to say the Bulls because they're... Yeah, maybe it is the Bears. Bears have so many holes. So, Matt, we'll start with you. What is wrong with this team?
Oh, boy. Where do we begin?
What's the number one? What are the 3 biggest problems for this team?
Well, I think overall it's just this sounds like a cop-out, but it's just a lack of talent across the board. A lack of the fact that a lot of things have been patchwork with this team, and it's been for years. I mean, when's the last time they truly, in the last 5 years, I mean, other than Kyle Long, there's nobody else on this team who's been drafted and developed correctly or developed well. And it's hard to say that about this year's draft class because we obviously don't know yet. So there's plenty of things that can happen or with some of these guys. But I don't know. Leonard Floyd looks overmatched. Honestly, the only guy I think who's been playing pretty well. Well, there's 2 guys. I think Cody Whitehair has more than handled his own at center position. He hasn't played, and I think he's been fine, which is good enough. And out on the outside at cornerback for whatever. DeAndre Hall, I think, has been fine, not great. He's okay. Everything else, it's just this offensive line is terrible. They should not be this bad. And Bobby Massey's been awful. Horrible.
So is Charles Leno.
And Charles Leno's pretty bad, but I still feel like he's played better than Bobby Massey. Especially
no doubt. Yeah.
And because Massey looks like he's on skates out there every time he plays. He's been overmatched in the last 2 games. The interior of the offensive line has suffered because of that. There were a few times when I rewatched that Houston game, every time Massey got beat, they were lucky that Kyle Long was somewhat in the vicinity to chip J.J. Watt. I mean, it didn't help all the time, but he at least was there. It could have been much worse if Long isn't as good as he is. So it's just talent. The talent is awful. The coaching's been. I feel like the offensive game plan's been terrible. I don't know what their identity is. They haven't scored any points offensively in the second half this year in 2 games, and it's just from top to bottom. There's just a huge question mark on everything. So it's a mess. It's. I honestly, when we did this preview 2 weeks ago or whatever, I optimistically thought they'd be 7-9 or something like that. I'd be shocked at this point if they win 3 games. They look horrible.
Yeah, Massey makes me long for the days of Jamarcus Webb.
Oh,
yeah, I'm not going to go that far, but
No, I will. Jamarcus Webb looked bad. There were just far too many plays where I watched Massey where he was just turned around before he could even get a hand on the guy.
The first week he went against J.J. Watt. Last week he didn't look like. I mean, he definitely didn't look like what he did against the Texans.
It was just. It's not good. Ben, you and I had a back and forth about drafting quarterbacks on this roster, and I concede that you are absolutely correct. Like, the fact that there's not a quarterback to develop here is inexcusable. But I think,
like I said,
but that for me is just that's just as much as that's bad. The problem is just the overall level of drafting that we haven't done. I just have not done. Is there anybody to hang your hat on this team as a young player where you're like, yep, it's Jake Long,
Kyle
Long, and
probably Eddie Goldman.
And you can't even be. What ended up being the status of his injury?
Ankle. He could
ankle. They said sprained for. Yeah. They said at least 4 weeks. I think,
yeah.
You know?
Okay, so it's not as bad as originally thought because I was like, oh, that.
Just a side note on this, before I get into the quarterback thing, why is Kyle Long playing?
I
especially
agree.
now. Yeah,
have the surgery, be ready for next year. What why do we have to Pernell McPhee this guy now?
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it. It doesn't make anybody who is worrying about playing through an injury is an idiot at this point. You have the surgery, get ready to come back. It's pointless. But as we discussed, and I discussed this with a couple other people with the quarterback position, it's the simple fact of a situation exactly like what the Bears are in now at this point, where yes, you're only 2 games in. No head coach is going to, completely, but developmental quarterbacks, so they can come in, you let them play and say anything that could make me think he might be a long-term answer or a stopgap type before, until we get that number 1 pick and get our guy or whatever the case may be. Instead, now we're going to suffer with a crappy veteran quarterback, Brian Hoyer, until Cutler maybe comes back. Apparently, now we're seeing 2 to 3 week injury, where it was reported that he needed surgery and was out 6 months. So I don't know who to believe in this. I tell you, I don't believe is the Bears because they lie about injuries all the time. So, but we talked about, and again, it's different time frames, so take it for what it is. But in the last 11 years, the Bears have drafted 3 quarterbacks, none of which have been higher than the 5th round. So the 5th round was the highest they took someone, and if I'm not mistaken, was that David Fales?
No,
he was a 5th rounder.
Fales was a 6th rounder. I think. Yeah, I think
it Lefevre?
I think Lefevre was the 5th round pick.
Okay, so who didn't even make the team.
Yeah, and then Nathan Enderle was the other pick.
But then you look at a team like the New England Patriots. And again, we'll get into the points of it, but after 2001, so we know what 2001 was. That was Brady's coming out party. That was the year they won the Super Bowl. So after that year, every draft after that 2001 year, they've drafted a total of 8 quarterbacks. So that's 15 years, so one every other year, if you will. If I don't have it in front of me, I think I said 5 of those 8 were drafted in the 4th round or higher, including a 2nd and two 2/3, possibly 3/3. And again, Scott, you said, and I've also had this said to me as well, like, you could also look at those as wasted picks, but what they were security blankets. I mean, you look at Matt Castle. He went 11-5 with them as a starter.
Yep.
They traded him for a second-round pick. They had Ryan Mallett as a backup. They ended up trading him for another pick. It wasn't a third, but whatever. It was a sixth, I think. Point of understanding what that position is, getting people in there for these exact situations where the season is pretty much a mudslide right now. You're not going anywhere except down. And this is your chance to get a young guy in there, albeit behind a very shitty offensive line. But, hey, everybody starts somewhere. Do anything. Like, this is why you have this. Instead, we get Brian Hoyer, and they're going to be bad with nothing in the future.
So I think the Brian Hoyer thing speaks to a larger issue, right? So the Brian Hoyer signing was to protect you if Cutler got injured. And you wanted that protection because for them, at least, they clearly thought that this was a team, right? Like the Bears, by signing Hoyer, like, you're essentially saying, listen, if Cutler goes down, we want to have a guy that can continue to lead this team, to victory. And so the Bears, like, there's just a big question right now for me that the Bears can't evaluate talent. The talent they have in-house and the talent that they're bringing in from outside, be it through free agency or through the draft. There's just a lot of question marks. And, I mean, listen, I'm not saying that this is the be-all, end-all, and I'm not saying that Brandon Marshall didn't need to go. I'm not saying that, it was maybe time to move on from Matt Forte, but at the same time, in a week where your offense was anemic in the second half, Matt Forte goes for 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. Brandon Marshall still looks like Brandon Marshall and is doing good work. And there was another Bears offensive player that was here last year, I want to say.
Martellus Bennett.
Bennett
had 100 receiving yards.
And you're just sitting here looking at all of this going, for some reason, I mean, the Bears couldn't keep those guys here. And listen, the Brandon Marshall thing is bigger than football. Mm-hmm. So I totally understand that. But to say that Matt Forte and Marty Bennett didn't have a place on this team, the Marty Bennett one goes back to, like, Greg Olsen on the Bears. Like, oh, we need to get rid of Greg Olsen. Why the hell do you need to get rid of Greg Olsen? That's a real football player. No, we need to do that. And it's the same with Marty Bennett. And, again, he might have been a bad voice in the locker room or whatever. But, man, at some point,
good teams have those guys.
Yeah. Like, not every guy in the NFL is a good guy. Not every guy in the NFL is a guy that I necessarily want to play with. But if Marty Bennett is going to catch 10 touchdowns and provide a real second option to Alshon Jeffrey, which the Bears don't have, I mean, it was on display, and you're just sitting there going, "Yep, that's about right." Well, the Bears cut their good talent. They bring in crap talent, and they don't draft any talent, and that's what you're seeing here. So, Matt, you have some comments. Go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say on obviously the Brandon Marshall thing, like you said, bigger than football. Totally understood it. The Marty Bennett thing, I understood it to a point, but it was still silly to give up on a top 4 tight end in this league. I mean, he's a talented football player. He's a jerk, or not even a jerk. He's just eccentric, and he's a loudmouth guy who's not afraid to voice his opinion, and that's fine. And you give up on him for pennies on the dollar. And then with Forte, they put all their belief in Jeremy Langford. And not that I don't think Langford can at least be a serviceable back, but Matt Forte now, and even this is before the performance he had on Thursday Night Football, Matt Forte is a better running back than Jeremy Langford. And you mean to tell me that Forte wouldn't have taken a 2-year deal to stay in Chicago? I don't know what the exact money would be or anything, but the Bears have a ton of cap space. I mean, I get the fact that you think you're probably better off trying to see what these younger guys can do. But at the same time, when you're so depleted of talent, then so the NFL is about winning now. It's not Major League Baseball. It's not Theo Epstein coming in and completely changing everything from the ground up and giving it 4 or 5 years or whatever it was to finally yield the fruit of your labor sort of thing. Because that doesn't happen in the NFL. Because guess what? If this Bears team is as god-awful as we think they are, I feel like Pace and Fox get one more year and that's it. So,
well, and Matt, you brought up a really interesting point there, which I want to grab real quick, which is, you want to give the young guys a chance, but then let's go to Ben's point, where you want to give those young guys a chance, but then you don't put a young guy at the most important position in football, which now becomes inexcusable. Right? So like they have two very different messages here, which is we want the young guys to play, but we want to win now. And it's like, well, which is it?
Yeah. Yeah, if you're going to do it, be all in on it. If you want your young guys playing, then you should have drafted a young quarterback this year.
And there were options.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it all across the league. Cody Kessler is going to play this week.
Jacoby Brissett.
Jacoby Brissett's going to play this week.
I think that goes to show you just how smart New England is. So not only do you have, obviously, Brady's suspended for the first 4 games. You have Jimmy Garoppolo, who you spent a second-round pick on, who Garoppolo looked fantastic in the opener, looked very good in the first half last week before his injury. And then Brissett comes in, does just enough to help win you a game, and he's going to start Thursday night. And the fact that they have those pieces in place, because guess what? Sure, New England could have went out and paid money for Brian Hoyer to be their number 2 and keep Garoppolo third. But they were like, we want to give Garoppolo that opportunity to play. Garoppolo comes in. Hell, he might be your next Brady because Brady's probably got 3-4 years max in him. And then
it's insane, by the way.
Yes, I know. And the fact that you have Garoppolo on the roster, a young guy who can't be any older than 24, I would guess, probably 23, 24, somewhere around there, and you go out there and you draft a guy in Jacoby Brissett, I believe, in the 5th round. Third round. Okay, there you go. That shows a commitment to understanding that you need talent at the position. And the Bears have scathed by having guys like Jason Campbell and Josh McCown and Jimmy Clausen and now Brian Hoyer. It's silly because you're not going to win.
It's the mental idea that
– Go ahead, Ben. No, I was just going to say, to the point that if you're not fully in belief of your ability to compete, then it's silly to have a guy like Brian Hoyer on your roster.
It's this awful idea in the NFL that you need a veteran backup quarterback. The Bears just continue to fall for it. Why do we need a veteran backup? Why do we need Brian Hoyer? We know what Brian Hoyer is. He's a bad quarterback, but he's a veteran. He somehow managed to stick around. Jason Campbell at the end there was bad. And we consistently just keep getting these old veteran bad quarterbacks because you got to have that veteran backup. Why? Why couldn't we have just taken a young guy and seen? I mean, this young guy could be bad, but he also could be good. With Brian Hoyer, we know he's bad.
It's a known commodity.
Well, and like the thing is, who I would much rather see start
Matt
this
Barkley?
game on Sunday? There's actually, other than Barkley, because Barkley's on the roster. But who I would have liked to have seen start this game? David Fales.
Hill.
Had they not, they loved him enough last year that when reportedly New England wanted to poach him off the practice squad, they released Jimmy Clausen and brought him up. And then all of a sudden Connor Shaw is the next greatest thing in the world and comes up and beats him out in training camp or whatever. And then Shaw gets hurt. Bears go ahead and cut David Fales. So then Fales lands in Baltimore with Mark Trestman. But the thing is, I would much rather see David Fales in this situation. I'd much rather see Matt Barkley. You might as well. I mean, why not? I don't think Brian Hoyer, when you're sitting at 0-2, does anything for you at this point. And it's dumb. And it gets people like me and you, Ben, and Scott, I guess, as well, riled up because it's dumb.
And here's the thing. Hoyer, you're right, Ben, is not very good, but he's serviceable.
No,
And
he's not.
He's
bad. He stinks.
He's not as bad as you think. Maybe I'm wrong. I could absolutely be wrong. I feel like he's
Wait, Scott, is he better or worse than Sean Hill?
but God, who knows at this point?
I'll just say this: going back while you're looking up Brian Hoyer's career statistics for whatever reason, going back to your points with Matt Forte, Brandon Marshall, and Martellus Bennett. I mean, the chances of them keeping all three, whatever. Let's say you even kept two of those guys. Are the Bears not 0-2 with two of those guys?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Just because I feel like if you still had Brandon Marshall and Forte,
there's no way Marshall is staying. So I'm saying, let's say you kept Forte and Bennett.
Okay.
I don't see them winning either of those games.
It's so hard to tell just because the running game's been so bad, and I don't know if that's just
Here's
purely
the
a
thing,
product of the O-line or
Matt Forte wasn't even like Matt Forte's value came in what he could do in the passing game and picking up blitzes and stuff like that. Like the simple fact of sitting here saying like, oh, the running game would be way better with Matt Forte. Matt Forte wasn't a great running back. He was actually I have to find the story, and I read it like passing through, so I can't even cite you where it was from or anything. But like Matt Forte is like historically bad on short yardage plays. Like he's like arguably one of the worst running backs in short yardage situations.
Well, yeah, that was why they brought in guys like Chester Taylor, and they brought in what's his name?
If we're gonna sit here and talk about what a great running back he is, but he can't even get you that 1 yard, when you needed it. Like Matt Forte's value wasn't in just the running game. Obviously, he was a good running back. He ran for whatever, like 9,000 yards or something like that. But his value came in what he could do in the passing game, whether it's picking up blitzes, catching passes. He was sure-handed. That's where his value is, and I don't see them being any better with him. Bennett maybe gives you another option, but
here's the problem.
Either of those games with him.
Here's the problem, though. Like, there's been nobody to pick up Forte's slack in the passing game, right? There's not a second receiving option on this team right now, right? Like,
but here's the problem too,
and I'm not again. I tend to, and I say all
55%.
I still tend to side with you, Ben. This team probably doesn't win, but they still got rid of guys that removed some holes. They got rid of guys that filled major needs on the offense and replaced them with guys who have created bigger holes than what was left behind. And so you don't even have a second tight end on this roster as far as I'm concerned, and you're parading out what's his name, Zach Miller, as your number one, and he's not in the same stratosphere.
There's a reason why he was effective last year.
Yeah,
and it was because they ran two tight end sets, and when safeties are forced to come over the top and cover Martellus Bennett, guess who's going to be
fair? But to be fair, Zach Miller was better at the end of the season when they put Bennett on the IR for whatever bullcrap injury that they lied about. So
yeah, the offense was much better run too. So
right, I mean, so, here's the trend that I'm trying to get to is it necessarily 100% the players, or is it this jerk-off offensive coordinator that they now have calling plays? Because he has shown me nothing. Not a single play where I go, wow, look at this creative play call. Nothing.
Well, and to me, I think the biggest thing is, and at least we saw this from Adam Gase last year, was that if the team struggled in the first half in certain areas, Gase was more than willing to go a different direction. It seems like their second half adjustments have been terrible. I mean, they haven't scored any points in the second half. The Bears had 10 offensive drives, I believe, in the second half on Monday, and failed to score. In the third quarter of this year, in 2 games, the Bears have 17 total passing yards. In the third quarter, 17 in 2 games. That
they stink.
Yes, so, that is awful.
So I want to revisit one last thing with the Hoyer. So Hoyer was not terrible last year. He completed 61% of his passes through 19 touchdowns against 7 interceptions. So I understand the idea that Hoyer comes in and like he makes sense if you think your team is good. The problem is the Bears aren't good, so having Brian Hoyer doesn't do anything for you because your team is still bad. right? Like Brian Hoyer makes a lot of sense.
Like they got Hoyer because they didn't draft a quarterback. Or
Of course, I'm not disagreeing, but like the Bears were selling us like, oh, this is a team that's going to go to the playoffs. We're playing to win, and so you look at it and go, okay, so if Cutler goes down for 2 or 3 games, Brian Hoyer comes in, like maybe the drop off isn't as great, and you have to worry about it. There being a rookie quarterback. The problem is the Bears aren't good, so Brian Hoyer doesn't make sense here at all because now it's, well, Brian Hoyer's trying to do stuff that we don't like. Honestly, I want the developmental quarterback because I want one of 2 things. I want that developmental quarterback to be terrible so that the Bears are then bad and get a better draft pick and can go draft a top tier guy if he exists at the top of the draft next year, or they can trade that pick and get a lot of picks and do that.
I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that the Bears are going to have a top 3 pick.
I agree. Like that's going to happen anyways. But at least with a young quarterback, if that young
gives me a reason to watch,
right? And if that young quarterback ends up being something, we're going into the draft. Maybe we still win only 4 or 5 games. We're in the top 5, top 7 picks of the draft, and you're going, all right, well, this isn't bad. Like we're not in a bad place. Like at least we think we have the quarterback position figured out. And that, as you always say, Ben, is the most important position in all of football, in all of sports, and we can move forward from there. Instead, now we're going to be drafting in the top 5, and we have nothing.
Right.
There's nothing. Like
legitimate. I think I don't know that it's a unanimous thing, but the name that I hear a lot for like the best player in the draft is I think he's a defensive end, but he could just whatever Von Miller played at Texas A&M. It's Myles Garrett. He's kind of like the unanimous, like number 1 guy, can't miss prospect. Well, number 1 pick. Like now you're in a position where, I mean, if it's me, I'm still taking whoever's number 1 on your board. But you're in the position where, how do you not take a quarterback? Like you're taking Deshaun Watson or whatever Kaiser or whatever from Notre Dame that everybody seems to love. Like you're going to be forced to take one of these guys because you have nothing. Like if you had, and again, I use him as an example, but it's a bad example just because he's actually having success right now. But like if you took a Dak Prescott or a Connor Cook or whoever, and he was at least like, okay, like then you could go to the number 1 pick and be like, we're going to build with Connor Cook and we're going to take Myles Garrett and, our pass rush that is non-existent, even though we continually spend money and draft players. Like that's going to be improved because of that. So they're stuck now. They have to find a quarterback. They can't wait another year. I mean, at this point, I have no idea why you would even think about bringing Jay Cutler back next year. It makes zero sense.
Because it costs you 0 money. I mean, that's it, right?
It costs you $17 million.
Yeah, because there's a $2 million cap hit if you cut him, but you save mil.
So you're right. So there is no reason for him to be back. The bottom line is, Ryan, like the questions are mounting in year 2, and for everything that we hated about Phil Emery, we're seeing a lot of the same with Ryan Pace.
I'm telling you right now, the best thing that could happen to Pace and Fox is for them to get the number 1 pick. It's the best thing that can happen to them because if they're going to get a quarterback, they locked up at least 2 years.
More. I bet they get 3.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is there's no – I mean, if let's say they end up with that 9th or 10th pick again, and then they draft and they don't get their quarterback to develop.
And then they're at the 9th or 10th pick again, then they're just gone.
Then they're gone. Whereas this way you got the number 1 pick, you at least earned a handful of years before they clean house.
Yeah, I agree. So this is just this sucks overall. Like I was saying to Matt on Monday, like I turned the game off. Like I watch meaningless Cubs baseball.
Do you remember how we made fun of the Bulls for being in basketball hell?
Mm-hmm.
The Bears are there.
They're in football hell. Because there's, like you said, kind of going full circle here, like you said, Scott, find me one position on the field, just a position group where you can look at with confidence and say, we're okay there. We don't have to get better there. I mean, the only one I could possibly think is middle linebacker, but Jarrell Freeman's 30 years old, so I mean he's not going to be around much more than another year or two. I mean you got Trevathan, that's about it. But
he's hurt.
What position group what position group can you look at with confidence and say we're okay here? We don't have to worry about it. Now,
maybe the defensive line, maybe, but there's no depth.
Who? Yeah, like Mitch Unrein is a starter. Like, how are you confident in that?
Well, I don't think he's that terrible. I think Hicks and Goldman are good.
But that's the problem is he's not that terrible.
Yeah,
like that's not a good way to judge a position group.
Yeah, and Lamar Houston, for all intents and purposes,
he's done.
Lamar Houston, he's done.
Yeah, he's not coming back.
That's 2 ACLs in 3 years. It's over.
If you can find a way to keep Alshon Jeffrey, maybe you can argue that your receiver group's okay, depending what Kevin White, if he can develop in anything other than like a third wide receiver.
Is he just bad? Like, is that where we're at? Like, he's bad?
I gotta find the quote real quick from Fox
giving him
today.
The benefit of the doubt right now, but yeah, I don't think he's gonna be more than because everybody talked about this speed and this deep threat. Like, they haven't gone deep to him once, so I'm just hoping that he's injured.
It's either he's injured or I'm looking at John Fox and Dowell. It's Dowell Loggins, right, Matt?
Dowell
Loggins, right? I'm looking at them going, are you kidding me that you just don't even know how to use this guy? Like, why are you not doing things?
He legitimately ran like nothing but go routes in college, and they haven't thrown one to him yet.
Well, and I understand that the pro game is different, but like shit, like you have to at some point play to your player's strength. I mean, there was. All right, well, Matt, go.
Well, so they showed this on the broadcast Monday night on Monday Night Football. I don't remember the specifics. I don't know if it's left or right, but Kevin White on like something close to 98% of the time lined up only on one side of the field. I believe it's the right side, and he had and he had only lined up on the left side like 12 times. But today, this is John Fox to a T here. I absolutely love it. So Fox was asked about Kevin White, and if he thinks he's gotten off to a slow start. John Fox says, I don't know that he's off to a slow start, at least by my opinion. You can't say he hasn't. He is off to a slow start. That doesn't mean he can't become something good, but the fact that and I understand Fox, probably about
6, I think.
Okay, that's probably.
I thought he had 3 both games, but.
And it's just they're not playing to his strengths. And the thing that I thought was interesting the other day was Monday night after a bad start on their first possession, I saw Dowell Loggins went to the screen game, and he tossed one. They tossed one to Eddie Royal, and Royal picked up like 30 yards or whatever in the screen game. That's exactly what Kevin White should be doing. That's what they need to do with him to start to get him more comfortable. I mean, They
tried one to him, and this 4.3 speed that they talked about, he looked like he was running with concrete shoes. They also did that end around with him too, or it wasn't an end around, but you know what I mean, essentially a handoff to him in the backfield, and that was an awkward. Slow.
He does. He looks. I don't know. It's really hard to get a good read on him. So
does he not have like screws or like a rod in his leg? Isn't that what he got last year?
Yeah, with the shin. So
like a guy whose job is to run and jump incredibly high and incredibly fast with a rod in his leg, I'm going to guess that's going to limit something. I'm not an expert, but
yeah.
Well, you both were wrong. He has 7 catches for 70 whole yards.
Well, we were right in between.
And here it goes to I said last week, like, I felt like I didn't feel like Kevin White was a great pick, and whatever you want.
I didn't think he was a great pick anyway, but
right. But now you start to see more of these numbers come out. Like the guy only lined up on one half of the field 98% of the time. Like that's
they knew that going in,
right? But that's like that to me screams project.
Yes. The Bears have openly said, though, that he was going to be a project. It was just his athletic ability. They took combine warriors.
It's almost
this is like what the Raiders did.
It's like Ryan Pace, man. Like Ryan Pace, he comes in here and it's like, oh, we're gonna do the Patriot way, and he thinks he's already got the damn Patriots. Like, this is a bad team. Like, you have to go back to like what Bill Belichick was doing when he inherited that team, and it's like, all right, we got to build everything here. We got to build systems and everything from the ground up. I'm at the point though where I'm looking at this and going, I don't know that John Fox makes a lot of sense as the coach anymore. I don't know that Ryan Pace makes a lot of sense as the GM because he doesn't seem to be able to draft. I mean, and it seems ridiculous to say that we need to redo the whole thing for the third time in 5 years in 15 weeks. But is that out of line for me to say that? I think do either of you disagree?
It's not going to happen. So I'm not even thinking about it.
It's not going to happen. But am I wrong for thinking that it should?
I think part of me thinks though that, and again, this goes against everything they've done as far as like signings goes, but something tells me that like Pace and Fox kind of knew that this is what the first 2 years were going to be. I mean, the roster they took over was dog shit. It had a few good pieces: Brandon Marshall, Matt Forte, Marty Bennett. But honestly, what else have they lost in 2 years that we can sit here and be like, oh, they'd be a much better team if they had these guys?
Fair point.
I guess it's just part of me thinks that they had this, but much like, Tom Ricketts, 3 years ago saying, oh, I think we have a chance to compete, knowing full well that they were going to win 70 games. That to me is kind of what this feels like. But at the same time, like Matt said, this is a win now league. This isn't a rebuilding team. So something tells me next year will be the big year where they go, we better see some goddamn improvements. Otherwise.
Yep, I agree. All right, let's finish this up for the week here. Our best bets for week 3. We're doing about average with what we pick and what it's doing. So if you're listening to us and taking gambling advice from us,
and God help you.
Yes, A, God help you, but B, you're probably sitting here going, man, I'm not going to get any of the big bucks here because you're not.
You know what we need.
I will say that Seahawks lost this week. That really bothers me with our.
That was bad.
Seahawks plus 10.5.
Yeah, that was no good.
I feel like each week now the three of us need to have our quote unquote lock of the week.
All right, Matt, what's your lock of the week then?
I don't know.
We'll start that one next week. Let's pick our games.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna go with I've got mine.
No, go ahead. Make your lock of the week. Go ahead, Scott. What's your lock of the week?
My lock of the week is gonna be the Dallas Cowboys -7 over the Chicago Bears.
Damn, I was actually.
I think we all agreed on that one.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing: they're -380 on the money line. Dallas is. They're just like, listen. There's no money to be had here. We're pretty sure they're gonna win.
Yeah, I agree.
They're the biggest favorite. Oh no, second biggest.
It's crazy to me that that Cleveland's a 10-point dog, which I know they're not good, but Miami's not that good either. Miami's like fine, but they're not world beaters. So I'm gonna go with Cleveland.
Yep, you're right. They're oh my god.
I'm going Cleveland.
You're saying Cleveland's your lock of the week?
At plus 10.
With Cody Kessler at quarterback.
With Cody Kessler, yep.
Okay, Ben,
that's going to be so bad.
Your lock of the week?
No, but didn't know we were doing lock of the week before this.
No pressure.
You know what? Screw it. I mentioned it before, and these aren't the ones we're betting on, correct?
No.
Okay. For some reason, and again, Scott, you made the very fair point. It was a West Coast team going east for that noon start, but I think the Buffalo Bills are terrible. I think the Arizona Cardinals are really good, so I'm going to go with the Cardinals -4.5. That feels like at least a touchdown.
I agree. You know what I love even more than that being thus doing lock of the week on those? I like taking the 3 of those and tossing them into a little 3-team teaser.
You love your teasers, dude. You love them.
That's what I like, and let me tell you something. when you actually put these all in 2Ts. Where did that Arizona one go? There it is. I tossed those all in the teaser. We're gonna take it as a. Do we want to do 6 or 7 points? Better odds on 6. 7-point teaser.
Oh,
The 7-point teaser, Arizona, you get them at plus 2.5. The Cowboys are then a pick over the Bears, and then the Browns
wouldn't it be
plus 7.
3.5?
For who?
Or are you doing a 6 point? Are you doing
I did
6 or
7.
7?
I did 7.
Well, 7 would be 3.5 then.
3.5, 2.5, 1.5, half.
Am I
No.
doing math wrong?
You're doing your math wrong. It's
I'm doing
4.5.
math wrong. Yeah, 4.5 to
It's
yes,
4.5
yes,
plus
correct.
2.5 is 7. So, yeah.
Yes.
I love that 3-team teaser there. I think that's a good one for us. That 3-team teaser right there with all of our locks of the week. I don't see any way the Browns lose that game by 3 scores, and I don't see any way the Bears come out of this week
With a win.
not 0-3. and listen, if the Bills are going to beat the Cardinals, I just don't see it being like it's going to be a field goal as time expires. Anything else that we'd like in particular?
I think you mentioned. I think we all kind of liked Oakland
Mm-hmm.
getting 2
Yeah.
at Tennessee. Although Tennessee did look good, but I like my chance. Oakland's got the best offense in the league right now.
Yeah, they're
Little fact for you.
destroying it right now.
All right.
So I think we wanted to do. So are we going to do just the teaser and the Raiders, or do we want to pick? I think we should pick at least one more game.
What do you like? There's nothing else that I really like just straight up. We'll
This
dawn
is
in it.
compelling
We'll get-
radio.
I know. So we'll dawn on
podcast.
that and get one more in here at some point over the weekend. Matt, let's go to closing thoughts. Let's start with you.
Closing thoughts.
Matt, we can't hear
I'm not
you.
going to say.
Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear him.
Sorry, it's been weird. You guys have been cutting in and out for me all night. I don't know what the deal is. But
Internet
anyways,
is hard.
yeah. My final thought is I'm not going to talk about the Bears anymore. So go Cubs.
Okay, Ben, closing thought.
I will go. The Team USA in the World Cup of Hockey is an embarrassment.
Yes, it is.
I was openly rooting against Team USA because
Phil Kessel not being on a team is a ridiculous joke.
did you see his tweet?
Yeah.
I was just saying he had an A1 tweet yesterday.
Yeah, Phil Kessel tweeting. I walked my dog. Felt like I should have been somewhere else. Oh, that was great. I enjoyed that. The World Cup. I'll go final thought with the World Cup of Hockey too. I love some of the stuff they've done with it. I think it's a good start. I would be just as okay though if they just kept it in the Olympics. Like, I don't want to see this turn into the Olympics don't happen because we have the World Cup of Hockey. But if that's what it is, whatever. That rule with the under-23 team, that's a tough one for me. Because, like, there's at least 3 players on that North American team that should be playing for Team USA. And so it kind of like for Canada, it's not a big deal. Like them without Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews and whatnot, like that sucks for them. But for Team USA, it's like that's 3 monster players that they could really use here. So that's my closing thought. They got to do some work on this World Cup of Hockey thing before I'm fully invested in it. And
Just a side note, I really like Green Bay minus 7.5 against Detroit.
Okay, good to know. Man, my one eye on this video is really closed.
Yeah, the video.
I see myself the whole time, and my eye is really close. All right, so good show.
Forrest Whitaker.
Bears suck. Cubs are hopefully going to carry us through for the rest of October, so we don't have to worry too much. So for Ben Russo and Matt Urick, I'm Scott Stero. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with more talk about how bad the Bears are and really getting amped up for the Cubs and their playoff run. Thanks for listening.